Prior to going on recess, the House conferees agreed to keep certain provisions that were included by the Senate in the Senate version, with the understanding to add additional language for further clarification. Up next, we have the provision on the legal holidays, which is up for discussion right now. Um, and at this time, the discussion is to whether or not to identify the holidays or leave it as leave it up to the administration to identify no more than 5 holidays, or if the members would like to propose adding additional holidays. And so at this time, I recognize any member that wishes to make any uh, to share their thoughts on how we would like to proceed with that provision.
Um, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The House is, I guess, would prefer 7 or more holidays. Um, with the shortage of GLHI and Medicaid, we need to increase the paid holidays, and that's where we're at right now. So we're at the discussion. We're at 7. The Senate came up with 5. Um, we like more.
Any other members? Recognize Senator King Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify, in the event that we identify these 7 holidays, we're going to go ahead. Is it still the understanding that we're going to identify the holidays and then spread out the hours across the fiscal year? Is that still the? Okay.
That was the last discussion, is whether once we identify, we would spread it out throughout the. We haven't voted on that yet. I believe you were not there, so we just left it the way it is.
But when you're saying that the recommendation is 7 or more, are you saying that we'll identify 7 now, and then should the administration decide to cut additional holidays, that will be done
That's
at a later time?
I mean, that's for us to discuss now. I know we gave the fiscal analysts some time to calculate, just to compare what was given to us yesterday and what the calculation would be. Uh,
Mr. Chairman.
Recognize.
Thank you. I know Chairman Yuda this time. He just looked at me and okay. Well, I think the discussion is none. I think that the proper language is there right now in the Senate version in spreading out these holidays. No, but if we're looking at the holidays and we're gonna designate certain holidays. I think it'd be important for us to do that, or put a specific language of not more than 10 or whatever holidays, with the language that's going to be spread out through the fiscal year. And in addition to that, to add language that all government employees that are salaried by the general fund, that would cover everybody, even perhaps the the idea of constitutionally protected positions. No, ourselves will be one. The judicial branch will be another. The judges, members of the legislature, would also be cut, so that the actual number is a true number that we're going to see on not the savings, but the actual realization of the funds. I think if we do that, it's going to be easier for us to actually get to a bottom line number, rather than picking and choosing what positions are not going to be affected. Obviously, those employees that are going to be working on holidays are designated to work on holidays would just get their flat rate pay of hourly wage. I think that if we're going to go that angle, we need to include the language that all employees that's funded by the general fund shall be included in the reduction.
Recognize Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Just quick clarification. Does that also impact employees who are partially funded by other sources? Like,
I guess no. So like, let's say an employee that's 90/10. No, obviously the 10% is not going to cover the salary on the holidays. It's the general fund that's going to be paying that portion. For example, if you spread that 10% through the fiscal year, the 90% is paying for the holidays. If you really break it down, but I believe that I don't know if we have that to break down with in front of us right now, but if we do that, it's going to be so much easier for us to determine the actual real dollar amount that we can put to whether it's group health life insurance or anything else, because we know for a fact that, and we discussed this during the concurrent resolution about the shortage in group health life insurance, how much we owe upfront right now to Aetna, and then the letter that came in about that $3 million initial payment, and then $1.5 million on a weekly basis for the next couple of months, and that's a payment plan that has been presented to the CNMI. So I think if we're gonna do this, we do it with real numbers that we know as members of this conference committee, that when we present it, we're not putting up just printed numbers. No, there's true numbers that's attached to the actual employees that are paid out of the general fund. Does that answer your question, Senator?
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, just want to clarify from Congressman Atal in terms of the calculation on the holiday pay, if there's outside sources. For example, if this employee is funded 50% federal, 50% general fund, and to determine the, amount of realization on that transaction, do we have to calculate 100% of that salary to determine the amount to take out? I just want to
Of course.
clarify that.
Yes, and I think that's why I use the 90/10 sample. No, it's easier because of the number. But if you took 50/50, the
It'll
the
be taken
federal
out of the
side,
50% of the
Yeah.
general side.
yeah, out of the general side. Plus the federal government would only apply to what laws we have. No? For example, if we did austerity to include federally funded positions, for example, they would just follow it because we're creating a statute that would do that. That's why I think when we did the austerity, we kind of stayed away from the federally funded positions because there's no impact to the general fund. Malika, is there?
So I guess the discussion right now is what that number is. And then we can discuss whether or not we agree with that number. The fiscal analyst is going to need about half a day to identify all the positions that will be affected, according to council. Who? Which number? No. According to council, even no matter how we language it, because positions are constitutionally protected, we can't apply the cuts to those positions.
Chairman, I just emailed you the version from OMB, so maybe that's something you can share with the fiscal analyst just to verify if it's accurate.
Okay. Yeah. Recognize Dave.
Just to let you know that when the budget arrives here at the legislature, the House and the Senate have taken action on the budget. And so the numbers that is coming from OMB, right, may not have reflected all the changes that we have taken place, for example, for those defunded positions, vacant positions, and those changes on the salary adjustments, on certain cabinet members. So I just want to share that with you. Thank
That's
you.
why I forwarded so that you can.
I'll share it with the fiscal
Cross-ref,
analyst
yeah.
and the members. I mean, since I just got this now, do you know if this listing includes vacant positions?
No, that's just the master listing. We don't know with what the fiscal analyst said our actions if they were removed from those lists.
Yeah.
So it's not. We just have to verify it,
Okay.
just so that just to see the numbers and we can get a rough idea. And also, it's something that we need to look at. I know we threw out a number yesterday at 2.2. The actual number is actually lower than that. So I'm not sure if those vacant positions were taken out.
Okay. Recognize Rep JP.
Yeah, Chair, but if I, thank you. If I may ask, I know that the Senate version provided provisions up to 5 legal holidays. But is there any fiscal analysis if should uh, the administration maximize the 5? Were there any fiscal analysts from
No, because whatever
fiscal
the
analysis?
administration decides to do, whether it be 1 or 4, that will automatically go into GHLI.
I think,
Whatever
well,
that
I
figure
think
is.
it's very important that we have that analysis because part of the provision from the Senate was to dedicate these suspended holidays and reserve it and deposit it for group help. And I mean, I think it's important that we know the figures of what 5 legal holidays is going to result into. Thank you.
Recognize Senator Carl.
Yeah, no, I think you guys have spoken about it yesterday. I think one of the things that makes the calculations difficult, and Dave could be the one to speak on it, no, is the law enforcement and the different salaries, the different applications on, and then the number of days. So you can have, if you're doing 1 day versus 5 days, there's going to be a different result, right, for all of that computation. So I think what we're trying to understand with the application of spreading the holidays across the fiscal year, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the only way we can do it is if we go ahead and identify the days ahead and lock in the number, and then that way you spread out the days. So if whatever, like he can do we can do the analysis and then come up with
Right.
that number.
Yeah, but even when you're alluding to law enforcement, right, like essential employees, I mean, if we are talking about unpaid holidays, that will also include the essential employees that if they work on holidays, they only get the one-to-one pay for their work.
Correct.
You don't add the additional
Correct.
holiday. So it applies to whether essential or non-essential.
Correct.
So
And
I'm sure that we can get that analysis.
yeah, we can get the analysis. That was kind of what I was saying. The analysis is going to be contingent upon how many days we agree upon. I think that's the problem. So if this body intends to go ahead and go through the route that was suggested, which is spread out the holidays over the course of the fiscal year, then I think it mandates us to identify those holidays immediately. Because if it's going to be left to the discretion, then the calculus of the hours are going to be off. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Carl. I think it's not so much an issue to identify which holidays rather than the amount of holidays, because essentially they're going to be paid for the holiday for not working on that holiday, because the that will be spread out throughout the entire year, whatever number we determine to suspend. And so the discussion now should be, what is that number that we can all agree upon, and that way our fiscal analyst can have the time to prepare the cost analysis, and how many additional hours that we would have to apply in the reduction of hours for all employees. Now the House identified 5, and if that's something that the Senate identified 5 as being the ceiling, but if the House would like to propose a different number, I know earlier the co-chair had mentioned 7 or more, but I think at this point we would have to make that determination as to a definite number, um, of how many holidays we would like to suspend. I recognize the Vice Chair Magofnia.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification, so the proposed increase from 5 to 7 or more, the funds that will be realized from the additional cuts is it still going to be used for the same intended purpose, which is to give it to GHLI, or will the funds be appropriated someplace else, or what's the intent?
Well, at least I'm gonna speak for myself. We agree that there's a need to fund GLHLI, and if we can further agree that the additional suspended holidays will be dedicated to GLHLI, I'm open about it.
Thank you for the clarification. I yield.
Thank you, Senator Magofnia. Any other members?
Mr. Chairman,
Recognize,
I think that
Vice Chair.
that we've thrown 5, 7. How about we because we're only saying up to, right? We're not giving a definite number, and the language that we're going to include is to spread it within the fiscal year, correct? And if we spread it to the fiscal year, I think there's maybe, I don't know what month in the year don't we have a holiday? I think maybe it's only August. August is the only month that we don't have a holiday anymore, right? We have a holiday from January, February, March, April, May, June, July, September, October, November, and December. So I think if we're hopeful, right, that the numbers are growing on the tourism side, as been reported in the papers. Let's try to shoot. Let's do the 5, the 7, and the 10, because we're only saying up to. And if they choose to do only 5, then it's only 5. But at least this body knows the true number of what we're going to be able to put to whichever entity that we decide in this conference committee, if it's group health life insurance or anything else. No, but I think it's important that we run those numbers so that we know for a fact already how much money is going to be designated, and if we're short, we can always look for that money in the process within the fiscal year. And in regards to the constitutionally protected salaries of the members of the legislature, and even the judicial, we can add language, a special provision that whatever the holidays are so choose, that will be their salary for that, and it'll decrease. We can change it within the budget, and and if they're saying that we can't, the salaries were created by law, whether it's through a commission or not. This body or this branch voted on a salary for a judge, for a justice, for members of this body. And we went through that under 1983, and we ended up going almost down to $8,000 annually. We're down to $32,000. But at the very least, we can do a special provision to reflect the holiday deduction from the pay.
So I guess based on your explanation, I guess our fiscal analyst can apply that holiday to every position within the whole positions listed under the general fund. Are you saying that once we identify whether it be 5, 7, or 10, then we can decide, or still leave that language to where it says up to?
I think we leave it up to, because we're not, at least at the end of the day, we have the protective language of spreading it out within the fiscal year, right? Not putting it, let's say that we list it down, and let's say Covenant Day, Citizenship Day, and they fall in the same pay period with the the less 10%, right? That's a big hit. But let's
But
let's
the issue
let's
that
not-
we have leaving it open, like up to, is that later on down the line, halfway through the fiscal year, if the governor decides to suspend 5 holidays, the reduction after the half year mark will be, I mean, salaries will be further reduced, and then later on down the line, if he decides to suspend additional holidays, then it kind of changes the pay rate or the reduction even further down the line. Whereas if we identify the exact number of holidays right now, we can determine what the rest of the year will look like for um, the further salary reduction. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you're right. The only problem with identifying the actual holidays, because if we're gonna say 10, and you decide which 10, but we're gonna spread it through the year. If they choose Citizenship Day and what's the other one in November?
It really wouldn't matter which ones they choose, because they'll still be paid the rest of the holidays. So if we suspend 5, no matter which 5, it's already reflective in the additional hour cut that we're gonna
Yes.
apply across the board. So once we identify what that number is, we can already start applying the hour reduction across throughout the fiscal year and not
And-
have to worry.
And get the money up
About-
front, right?
Right.
But in retrospect to that, what if the collections increase and they continue to suspend, and there's a supplemental funding that's sent over this way?
Well, that's why
That's-
whenever the supplemental comes, then we can increase hours back to between 90% to 100, if that's how much it'll cover for the rest of the fiscal year. But
I'm very optimistic with what we're saying here, but we've been through this many times where the actual supplemental never makes it this way, when we know that everything else is being purchased or spent, knowing the fact that we didn't appropriate these funds, right? So I think they just, to protect our body also, right, this branch, that if we're gonna do that, then let's shoot an exact number and make it permanent, at least for this fiscal year. Whether it's 5, 7, 10, but I think it'd be conscious, and it's important that we get the numbers first, because what if the 7 is really not a big difference from the 10? No. Then why push to 10 if we don't need to get to 10 when we can get it somewhere else? For example, no. So I think we if we can see that, and I hate the fact that we have to put a lot of pressure on our fiscal analysts, but I think they've done pretty well, and they should be able to provide this information to us. And our actions here makes it easier for them to break it down, because we're looking at a different budget than what was submitted by the administration.
and so I guess at this time, Dave, I think if you can just calculate what one holiday would look like, applied across all positions in the central government, then we can move from there. And so at this time, Dave, if you need to work here, that's fine. If you need to be excused, to be able to concentrate on those figures and then come back to the committee once you have that figures, we'll proceed when you get back with those figures. And so with that, members, we move on to the next tabled provision. I mean, we can go to 605 or 707. I mean, maybe just to go in order, we can go back to 605. I mean, 603. Is that good, I think? Or did we agree on 603, or did you want to include additional positions? Okay, that's fine. Then 707B was the other one. Seven oh four G.
Page 30, line 9.
Oh, 704G.
On 603, I think we last left is we were gonna decide whether the detail was gonna be put back. I believe the fiscal analyst was said the other attachment with the lump sum was a lot easier, so we left it at that. I didn't think we voted on whether.
But I think the discussion was that if there was additional positions that needed to exceed statute, or then we would identify it like how we did the department heads.
Okay.
So I think some of the positions that I saw included, for example, the commissioners, right? So if you would like to list, I mean, because we've decided to remove that attachment completely, um, we weren't too familiar with all the positions in which the House had proposed to increase or exceed the statute or cut. Um, we will take a short recess. Prior to going to recess, there was some discussions over one of the provision, but that it will depend on how the committee will proceed with the Schedule A. And so we move on to the next provision that was under discussion, which is 707B. The House conferees had some concerns over the language of including an outside source that will fund 24 employees under the second senatorial district. And so I would like to hand the floor to the House to determine whether that is something that still needs to be discussed or any new discussions amongst the conferees have changed that.
Thank you, Chairman Manglonia. We discussed this yesterday. I believe we waited for Senator Neighbors. We clarified some issues yesterday, and since this is an outside source coming from the second senatorial is ARPA funds, we are okay with the language. We have no objection to it.
Thank you, Co-Chair. And I think I did get a message from the secretary that as long as it's in the provision, it shouldn't be a problem. And so there's already the understanding that the outside source will be deposited into the Commonwealth ARPA fund that will be used to address the 24 employees, which the municipality will identify and provide to the Department of Finance on those 24. Okay. Any other discussions? If there's none, so right now there are two provisions that have yet to be addressed, pending the analysis from our fiscal analysts on the effects of the suspension of holiday pay, whether it be some of the numbers that were thrown out, whether it be suspending 5, 7, or 10 holidays. And so he has been tasked to determine what just one holiday, a suspension of one holiday would look like, and then we can determine how to proceed with how many holidays we'll be voting to suspend. The other provision, the salary cap, will be determined if the committee will agree whether or not to include the detailed listing of all personnel that will accompany Schedule A of the budget bill. The detailed analysis, the House version included all personnel funded by the general fund, along with the salary proposed for each position. The Senate took that out and left the summary, which is Schedule A, with the understanding that there aren't any positions that can go beyond the statute, the current statute, with the exception of the resident department heads for the first and second senatorial district, which have been exempted. But the detailed version included positions along with amended salaries based on the statute, because some of the positions propose a higher salary for certain individuals, and so we wanted to adjust those salaries to meet the statute. And so until we can determine what the effects of the holiday would have on the salaries of all individuals, we will recess until such time we can get the analysis done on the effects of the holiday pay. But at this time, before we recess, I open the floor to any members, and I recognize the co-chair.
Thank you, Chairman Manglonia. The House side will proceed with your version. We'll skip the detail part, the detail listing because we won't have enough time. So we'll just wait for the calculation of the holidays and move forward. So as of now, uh, we will go ahead and agree with the version the Senate gave us, which under 603. So we have no issues anymore. We just accept the Schedule A that was given to us.
Thank you, co-chair. I think, but maybe if this is something that members are willing to share, what are some of the concerns that we may have with the allocation done by the Senate, so that we can, while on recess, we can begin discussions on what are some of the stuff that what are some of the concerns that the members have. I know one of it being monies that were taken from Saipan Mayor, and that's certainly one of the discussions that we'll have when we get back. Are there any other concerns in which the House have that we can start deliberating on in the when we go on recess?
Yeah, just those other two, which is GLHI and Medicaid. Those are the
Okay.
three main contentions right now. Everything else, I believe the House is already okay with what was presented to us. It's just a matter of allocating it to the proper, whether it's Medicaid or GLHI. And we still haven't discussed the retirees. No, that's something that we need to at least lay on the table for discussion.
Thank you, Chair Yumo. Any other members? Um, Short recess before we go on our extended recess. prior to going to recess, the House has shared some of the things that the Senate conferees will deliberate over during recess. One thing that I do want to share with the House conferees as part of this discussion and the concerns surrounding GHLI, the Medicaid, and possibly the mayor's office, Saipan, is the Senate is more than willing and open to the discussion on increased taxes that could follow the budget bill, and that we could expeditiously work on getting these tax increases passed in the Senate, and these tax increases, such as an increase to tobacco, an increase to sugar sweetened beverages, and possibly construction and betel nut. These are some of the taxes that could address some of the activities that support uh, the insurance programs that ultimately services the entire Commonwealth. And so, whether it be introduced as a special revenue bill or additional revenue to the general fund, that's something that the Senate conferees is open to discuss in order to address some of the actions that we've done in taking money from the Medicaid to help fund certain activities. And so, in trying to restore funding to these entities like GHLI and Medicaid, again, we're more than open to that discussion on these increases in these different activities. And so, I hope that with that understanding, that the Senate, that the House conferees can maybe have a better understanding on some of why we did those actions on those entities, and whether or not that these bills can address the actions that we did, and move forward in basically other issues that may arise that are separate from the GHLI and Medicaid. And so with that, we will come back at 3 p.m. Hopefully, I will check with the fiscal analyst to see how much more time he needs, if he needs to go past that 3 p.m. mark. But we'll definitely come back by 3 to see where we're at that time. And so we will be in recess until 3 p.m. Thank you.